All right, welcome back to Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. What the hell happened to you, Jerry? I can't even get started.
I was attacked by a viper 2 weeks in a row that snuck into my house. I think my wife let him in because he's a charming viper, and he attacked me twice, and I had some medical issues, so I'm under doctor's care now.
Didn't you have enough trouble with Bob Orton, his dad? Why would you?
Well, I kicked his ass so many times, but I actually saved the viper's dad, saved him from being sterile a couple of times, and so I think Randy, I can't understand why the vicious attacked by this deadly viper.
How did you save the viper's dad from being sterile?
Yeah, well, I talked him out of some things that he shouldn't have been doing. And we all know the age, and I won't go any further than that because he's a family man. But this is back before the days of that. So.
Did you ever wrestle the grandfather, Randy's grandfather?
I wrestled Bob Orton Sr. in Oklahoma. I don't know. It had to be about 1969, 1970. I wrestled him several times. He was as stiff could be. Have you ever seen pictures of that beast? He was an animal.
I've seen pictures. I obviously never met him.
And the pictures really don't do him justice because he's all bent over and hulked over like that. But that man stood up. He stood about 6'7" and probably weighed a good 300 pounds. And he was not a fleshy guy either. And he moved like Orton's move. I mean, he could move from one side of that ring to the other. He was a hell of a man. He was a stiffy and a half. But I came along just the right time because it was nearing the end of his career, and the philosophy. Well, you know Bob Jr. how his philosophy is kind of off the wall. Well, you magnify that about 10 times. Bob Sr. would be a perfect citizen in today's world. I tell you, his thoughts, even back in the 60s, were just so radical. But he was a fun man to be around because of his stories. And if he liked you, if he took a liking to you, John, he would take you in that ring. And not only would he give you a hell of a match, but he would be teaching you the entire time that you were in a ring. And I think that's so important, that we miss a lot of that nowadays. And these guys being able to teach on the fly like that. But Bob Orton Sr. was one of those guys.
Well, Bob Orton Jr., I got to tag with him, one of my first tag team partners in Japan, my first trip to Japan. And as we were going to whatever the easterly island is, there's 4 islands, Honshu being the main island where Tokyo is. As we're going to that long bridge that you go across, we let Bob Orton off. And I said, Bob, where are you going? He goes, had a little problem there a few years ago, kid. I can't go back. He didn't go back to the entire island.
That's probably Sapporo, Hokkaido.
No, not Hokkaido. That's north. This is Shikoku or the easterly island.
Oh, the other one. Man,
you didn't wrestle there much.
Bobby was barred from the island. Now, I got a story with Terry Funk where he and I both were almost kicked off an island before a show or after a show one night. So that's a future show there.
Well, Bob told me he had slapped a mafia guy something, and they literally banned him from the island. I loved Bob. I still love talking to him.
Oh, Bobby Orton is the greatest kid and the greatest man in the world. I mean, he's such a good guy. There's nothing negative about Bob. Every time you see him, he's got a smile on his face. And I ran into him in Iowa, in that place that's near and dear to you where you made a couple of text messages late one night. But we won't go into that. But anyway, Bobby, I said, Bobby, he pulls out his phone. He said, give me your number. And he's still got one of those damn flip phones. I said, Orton, don't you know they're modern day phones? I took him out and showed him my little iPhone 4 at the time. And he said, man, I don't know how to operate that. And I went back and I told Randy, I said, Randy, your old man still got that damn flip phone. He said, I know. I bought him a damn new iPhone, and he put it in the desk drawer and never took it out again. So.
That's Cowboy Bob. What a great worker, too. Threw the best punch in the business, man. That was awesome.
Oh, he did. And he was so smooth. I mean, you look at the kid and you see those smooth moves, and you can go back into the vintage tapes and pull them up of Bobby Jr. And you could see that same smoothness, that same psychology, that same body language. And it's generation from generation. Whereas the grandfather, he was just one of those big old guys like you that just plowed over people and told a hell of a story and was a very, very good top card drawer in Oklahoma and throughout the South. And I guess throughout wherever he went, because Bob Orton Sr. is a legend for more than just being the Orton's dad and granddad.
Well, you mentioned all the generations of the Ortons that you knew. You have been involved in some of the most important moments in wrestling history, and not just as a witness, as an active participant. In the 2008 Hall of Fame, where I got the honor of inducting you and your brother Jack, the Brisco brothers, into the Hall of Fame, the biggest laugh I got from a joke was one that came backstage, because after all, only a few people would have caught it anyway, was when I set it up by saying, when the white man came to America, they took the natives' land. They took the natives' buffalo. They took Manhattan for some shiny beads and a bag of Smiths. And finally, the natives got them back when the Brisco brothers sold Georgia Championship Wrestling to Vincent Kennedy McMahon. And I heard this roar backstage from Vince McMahon. I was on stage. I could hear him laughing backstage. That seminal point in history was very important because it was leading up to WrestleMania. But first, why is that story so funny for those that don't know?
Well, the story is, I mean, when we were making this deal, and this is a long, drawn-out story, and I could ramble on for the length of a Bruce Pritchard podcast, but none of us
That's
want
4 days.
that all day. So I'm going to make it nice and condensed so we can enjoy it. The story is, we were making this deal. We're all in Atlanta in these attorneys' offices. There's attorneys, these big old round tables. You've been in meetings like this, and there's a damn attorney, for everything. For every little detail, there's a damn attorney, and they're all from New York. And Jack and I have our two little Georgia attorneys there, and we're kicking ass on the negotiations. So finally, we call a coffee break. We go in the coffee room. Now, Vince, I know Vince like his coffee, and this is before I was a stooge, so I didn't have to make his coffee. So I'm over at the refrigerator getting me a Diet Coca-Cola or a bottle of water, whatever. He's over at the coffee maker. Back then, they didn't have those instant coffee things. You had to put it in. You had to stand around the coffee pot for a little while, bullshit a little bit. So we're standing around while these lawyers were dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And he looked at me and said, damn, Brisco, you guys are trying to get back Manhattan in one fell swoop out there, aren't you? I mean, he was, he related to that, to the Manhattan story. And I said, well, we gave you Manhattan. Look what you did to it. He said, well, you're getting it back now, damn it. Let's get back in there and finish this thing. So for however many years, every year, once or twice a year, other people could tell you this, and production meetings, when it had absolutely nothing to do with the sale of Georgia, Vince will bring that up and say, yeah, he tried to get New York back in one day, making a deal with him. Don't ever do a deal with Brisco. That outsmarted him. He may outsmart Vince McMahon and his team of 50 attorneys from all over the country. So he continually did that to me. And recently, when they were out here to my home, Vince pulled my young son, Joseph, to the side and told him the story how I tried to rip his ass off, So when you said that, you were probably the only guy that had ever said that besides Vince McMahon. So it probably, ha, ha, ha.
I could hear him on stage. I was on stage. He was back at grill position. I could hear him laughing backstage. It was awesome.
Well, that's the proof, and he knew it, and that was his line. Though you had actually stolen Vince McMahon's line.
So during that time, this is why it was so important in history. So Vince was not the first national wrestling telecast. So WTBS started up in 1972. That was the first national cable channel. 1976, they got Georgia Championship Wrestling. USA started up right after that. 1982, Joe Blanchard, the father of Tully Blanchard, the grandfather of Tessa Blanchard, had Southwest Championship Wrestling on USA Network. So you had two cable companies that were carrying national cable telecasts. Now, at the same time, Vince McMahon had just bought WWE from his dad in 1982, and immediately he started buying up all the assets of the territories. He got Hulk Hogan from Vern Gagne. He got USA Network from Joe Blanchard. Well, then the one thing he needed to be the only national broadcast leading up to WrestleMania the next year was Georgia Championship Wrestling and WTBS. So that's how you guys came into play. How did it first happen that Vince McMahon contacted you guys? You guys were what, with Jim Barnett, Paul Jones, and Ole Anderson, right?
Yes, and Bill Watts was a stockholder also, and the Wards out of Columbus, Georgia, they had a small piece of it too. But Vince McMahon did not really reach out to Jack and I. We reached out to him, and it was quite by accident. We had, we were NWA up through and through, so we had tried once before to pull a coup, for lack of a better word, with Georgia Championship Wrestling, and we could not get the full cooperation of the stockholders. We felt we were being manipulated, and we'd already seen Vince had already taken Piper, he had taken Slaughter, he had taken Hogan, and what he was doing, he was going around, as you know, John, he was cherry picking each territory. So when he would go run into those towns, he didn't have to take the time like they do now and establish a star, because he had already cherry picked an established star in that market and had him on board with him. So, but what he was missing was that actual USA was a good network, but it didn't have any of the penetration that TBS had. And TBS was in every nook and cranny of the United States and border to border. And so, but he still, even though he had USA, he wasn't getting the penetration to run these shows and get back his money for investing in these assets from other territories. So, but when he got us, he had that asset. But how it happened, we reached out to him right where we're in Charlotte, North Carolina, right in the middle of Jack and I's heel turn against Youngblood and Steamboat. And so we had heard that, Piper, like I said, Piper had already made a move up there. And so we'd heard that Piper went to grab a table. And when he went to grab that table, his tendons got slid by that rail underneath the table. As you know, it's got that crooked rail underneath the table. If you don't grab it the right way, you can cut your fingers. We'd heard Piper had his finger cut off. So we were all concerned about it. We were all doing promos at Crockett's office Wednesday morning. So Jack said, "Hey, Jimmy, have you talked to Vince Jr., found out about Piper? Everybody here is worried about it." Jimmy, I'm not calling that asshole, I'm not calling him. And Jack said, "Do you have his number?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you mind if I call him, find out how our brother Piper is?" He said, "No." So a bunch of us went in the room. There was Valentine, there was the young folks, Wahoo. Everybody was kind of boogie woogie man. Everybody kind of standing around Jimmy's office. Jimmy on the other side. He picked the phone, dialed Vince's number, hands it to Jack, and Jack said, "I'd like to speak to Vince McMahon." And well, who's calling? And we had no speakerphone. And Jack said, "Jack Brisco." And he said, the lady said, "Hang on a minute." And within 30 seconds, Vince was on the phone. Jack was asking a simple question: "Hey, how's Piper doing? We heard he had his fingers severed." And Vince said, "No, we got him to a specialist. They were able to reattach the nerve in there, and he's going to have 100% movement, 100% use of his hand." And Jack said, "Well, that's great. We just wanted to reach out." And Vince said, "Are you in a group?" And Jack said, "Yes." And he said, "Can you talk?" And "Nope." And he said, "Well, give me a call in about an hour." He said, "I'd like to talk to you and your brother about something." And so Jack said, "Okay." So hung up the phone and, went back and did promos. So when promos was over, I went over to Jack's house and, excuse me, we thought that he was going to make us an offer to be on talent, because we had no clue, that he was interested in buying Georgia Championship Wrestling. But Jack and I had talked about it because the reason we were having trouble in Atlanta is we had we kind of had the same vision that Vince was having about, you know, spreading nationally. I mean, every week I was doing promotions at that time. I'd taken a year off and just concentrated on promotions in Ohio, Michigan, West Virginia, and part of Pennsylvania that we were expanding into. And we were doing such great business. Every we go and sell and we'd be sold out because our talent was so hot on that superstation. So as I was saying there, we got on the phone. We called Vince. So we, like I said, we thought he was calling for a talent, and he said, hey, you guys ever consider selling? And Jack said, selling. And then Vince went into the conversation, you know, that he'd be interested in buying if we wanted to meet. He said, when you guys have a day off? And just as it turned off, the following Thursday we had a day off. Then we were in Richmond that Friday night. So he said, why don't I make you a reservation? You know, we meet up, and we had the old Eastern Airlines at LaGuardia, the Eastern Conference room they used to have, the precursors to all these guy clubs and everything. And he rented out one of those things. So it was just Vince, Linda, and Jack and I. We met. We flew up there and we met, and we kind of laid out the structure of it, and we moved forward with it. But the whole thing was started and thought of in Jimmy Crockett's office, which is really ironic. And leading up to that, you know, we knew, you know, we saw what Vince was doing. We wanted to do the same thing, but on the same thing, we saw how he was investing in all the talent and everything, and it was depleting the NWA of all the superstars. So.
He dropped out of the NWA. He bought the company from his dad in '82. In '83, he dropped out of the NWA, and it became pretty clear to a lot that he was trying to go national. But you know, because you had the advent of cable television, you could actually go national now, whereas you couldn't before. You guys were for it. You and your brother Jack, the Brisco brothers, were for it. You were minority owners, I think, in Georgia Championship Wrestling at that time because you had several other partners. What was everybody else thinking, and what was everybody else in the locker rooms thought about Vince during that time?
Well, we were in Charlotte, of course, at the time, and making Atlanta TV, and every week, you know, another star was disappearing. Every week, you'd hear about this guy being gone, and you know, it was like almost. I mean, it was almost a mirror image of '94 with the WWF at the time, when, you know, we were just slowly losing our talent, and they were going back to the South, and so. We just kept counting faces every time we go in a locker room, and you know, our numbers were dropping, because all of our stars are gone, and attendance in the houses, you know, instead of being 105%, we were down to like 80 and 90%. You know, we're still drawn because we still had that superstar, but the talent. Hey, did you hear about this guy? Or then someone, you know, screw that guy. You know, he's gonna kill the business. The business is gonna die. We'll all be out of work. You know, that old locker room bullshit. You know, we're all doomed. You know, I hope you have something good to do. I hope your investments are good. I mean, the guys hated Vince McMahon. They hated him.
Everybody, the promoters, the boys, everybody.
Promoters, the boys, and everybody, but they were also hoping on the boys anyway that they would get that phone call, and they were asking each other, "Hey, you got this guy's number, or you got this guy?" Everybody was wanting somebody's number, but at the same time, they were hating on and cursing of Vince.
Well, once the sale went through, did Vince come down to that Georgia Championship Wrestling, which later became WCW? Did he come back down to the locker room? Did he come down to the show? What happened then? When did Vince first show up in Atlanta?
Okay, I wasn't present there. I didn't want to be present there because I truthfully, John, my brother and I had death threats on us. We were told we had 3 days to live. Road Warrior Animal, God rest his soul, what a dear friend. He came up to me and my brother Jack in Cleveland, Ohio, and said that there had been a bounty put on Jack and I, and be careful who we ran into the ring with. And they told they'd give the Road Warrior $5,000 a piece if they would hurt one, if they'd break one
who put up the bounty?
Minor Jack's leg or arm.
Who put up the bounty? You have to have an idea.
Well, I tell you, I was told who took the bounty. It was that damn Buzz Sawyer, and I wish he would have tried because I'd have him puking in the corner in 2.5 minutes like I did every time I got in the ring with it.
So Buzz Sawyer put the bounty on you guys?
No, but Ole put the bounty on us, and Buzz was going to collect it.
Ole Anderson put the bounty on you guys?
That was the word, yeah.
Wow.
And that came from Paul Jones, the wrestler Paul Jones from North Carolina.
And he was the one that was your partner at the time. Ole was the booker at the time,
no,
right?
Paul was, this is a different Paul. The old Paul Jones was our partner in Atlanta, Georgia, was an old timer. He's probably my age now, but he had wrestled in college, so he took a real liking to my brother and myself because we were college athletes and wrestlers too. And so just about anything that we did and said, the Paul Jones, the promoter, would agree with us. And we knew we had him on the side, and he was the original promoter there and so he had the majority of the stock. So
did you ever ask Ole
how Barnett got involved? Barnett, after Vince called, he said, well, I'll throw my stock in. He said, and he's the one that started telling us about Paul Jones. You guys need to go to Paul and get his power of attorney for his stock because his wife had it, and Paul was getting up there in age, and we didn't want any discrepancies on anything. So we had that covered. So we called Paul and said, hey, we're in Atlanta for TV. They used to come and bring us down Atlanta TV every Saturday. And so we met with Paul Jones before or after TV. I can't remember well. Told him what our plan was, and pulled out the paperwork. Okay, this is what we're drawing. This is what you've been getting paid. This is what this guy's been getting paid. This is what this guy's been getting paid. And it was just obscene the way the numbers were floated around there. And so we convinced him to sign a power of attorney. We had our attorney go over to his condo, and him and his wife signed a power of attorney to Jack and I. When he did that, and we had Barnett friend, we had the magic number. We had about 55 points at that time there, which overruled Ole and Watts and the Wards down in Columbus. So,
did you ever ask Ole about this? Have you obviously seen him since?
Ole won't talk to me about it. I tell you, you know me, I'm a positive guy. When I turned 70 years old, John, I said, man, hell with this thing. I'm not carrying any more heat. I'm not carrying any more hate because I'd read the awful things that Ole said about me in different books and different interviews and all that stuff. And we were in Charlotte, one of these fan fests. I said, I'm going to go up to Ole and thank you. I really enjoyed working inside the ring with Ole Anderson. He was one of those guys that would beat the hell out of you unless you fought back. But he would make you go to that different level. There's very few guys in our business that are capable of that. And if you felt off or something like that, Ole just beat the crap out of him until you started coming back. But once you showed him you were going to fight back, he was like a lamb to slaughter. I mean, he'd go anywhere you want him to go. And so I really enjoyed my time in the ring with him. Being a business partner with him was one of my worst experiences I've had in my adult life.
When you sold it, I read online at least, you got $900,000 is what I got, and that you and Jack got a job with the WWE. Is that accurate?
That's pretty close to accurate. Well, we got on that on the sale, but we also got a 5-year consulting deal with Vince, Jack and I both. And there was a rumor going around we had a job for life. That was not true. If it would have been, Jack would have been working up till the day he died for Vince. But when Jack quit working, that was it with him and Vince. He never got enough paycheck from him except a royalty paycheck. Yeah, the figured pretty accurate, and but what's never included in there was that 5 years that my brother and I each got for consulting, which was another lump sum thrown on that thing, and that's the reason Vince always said that I got Manhattan back. Because we negotiated that for ourselves, and then we also had part of Florida, championship wrestling in Florida, Dusty Rhodes and Mike Graham, Kearns, and all those guys, and we had part of that. But we knew once we made that sell to Vince for Georgia that we would instantly be screwed out of our percentage. We had like 25, 30% of Florida. And we knew we would instantly be screwed out of that. So we were able to talk Vince into buying Florida. And he didn't want to touch Florida because the old man, Senior, and Eddie were so tight with each other. I mean, they were almost business partners. And so he didn't want to, but we kind of deal with that. Well, that's kind of what we insist on doing. And so we finally got him agreed to that. And that's another deal where the Indians getting back Manhattan. They're only going back to the original line.
Vince had now he had the national television. He had WTBS. He had USA Network. He was all doing it looked like leading up to WrestleMania. So this was, say, July 14th, 1984. WrestleMania was the next year, March 31st, 1985. WrestleMania 1. Vince reportedly mortgaged his home for WrestleMania 1, which I think he said in interviews as well. But he sold the time slot at TBS to Jim Crockett the day before WrestleMania, March 30th, 1985. So it looks like he got TBS for that promotion leading all the way up to WrestleMania. And the day before, when he needed some money to cover Liberace and Muhammad Ali, all the guys that he brought in, he sold it for $1 million to Jimmy Crockett. Do you think that that was a plan the entire time just to promote that first WrestleMania? And then he needed a little money at that time and sold it and got him through WrestleMania? Because he had 1 million buys that first WrestleMania on closed circuit. It was a huge success. But if it hadn't have been a success, we might not be talking about Vince McMahon today.
We would be. And as far as your question goes there, I really think, without that sale, and a lot of people put a number on that, but I think it was more like $1.5 million he got from Crockett for it, because I used to rip Vince about making so much more money than what he bought it from.
And what he sold was he sold the time slot. He didn't say.
Yeah, he sold the time slot, but that thing was destined for Vince. Vince did not go in with the idea that I'm going to keep this a little while until I promote WrestleMania and then sell the time slot. He went in it with full gun blazing. I'm going to take this over, and we're going to be national. This is going to be our national vehicle to get us everywhere. But it was destined to doom right off the bat, because number one, Ted Turner didn't like Yankees, and he didn't like that showbiz stuff. He liked wrestling, as he called it, and he wanted wrestling on his shows. And right from the get-go, right when Vince came in and preempted the matches and put tapes on there, it was doomed at that day for failure. And he hung on to it until, he figured out economically that I'd be better off selling it to Crockett, for this. And I used to rib Crockett. I said, you paid him double of what Jack and I was wanting, because before we went to Vince, we're NWA guys, like I said. So we were kind of following protocol. We went to the Crockett's, told Crockett's we were interested in selling our portions of Georgia Championship, gave them a price. We went to Joe Murnick, who was a co-promoter with Crockett's in Mid-Atlantic, who did Virginia's and all that. And we went to Barnett and Watts, with the idea that we wanted to sell our shares. So us selling our shares really wasn't a secret at that time inside the NWA. It was just a secret among the boys. And being able to pull the thing that I'm the proudest of it's almost like Montreal, being able to pull this thing off without a single leak back in those days is phenomenal. But
so Crockett could have hopped in for less money and kept Vince McMahon out of Atlanta anyway, if he'd have just done it.
Totally. We were offering it to him for half the price that we got to Vince, like I said, and it would have been an amicable deal, and and all that stuff would never happen. But
hey, this is a great story about how Vince.
Here's what happened, John. Crockett, as soon as we made the offer to sell our portions, he called Ole. Ole said, "Oh, damn Indians, they're trying to rob you. I'll show you the books. It ain't worth that much." Well, here's a guy drawing 4 paychecks from 4 different sources, telling the guy that we're trying to sell stock to, that we haven't got any dividends, and in a couple of years and almost asked for reverse dividends. And I can't believe I'm even talking about dividends, as an old country boy like me. But anyway, he had told Crockett that we were trying to rip him off and it wasn't worth that, so that we wouldn't sell. So we'd be forced to kind of go down on a price and kind of just go away, what he was hoping for. But we didn't go away.
It's funny how Vince outmaneuvered Crockett almost every single turn. When he's going to put a Clash of Champions or Starrcade, one of the ones on Thanksgiving Day, that's where Vince came up with the idea for Survivor Series on Thanksgiving Day. He pressured all the cable companies.
On Thanksgiving Day, where we ran our Starrcade, Greensboro was, even before Starrcade, Greensboro was a place you wanted to be on Thanksgiving Day. I don't care where you were in the United States. Greensboro, North Carolina was the place to be back in the 70s for Thanksgiving, because you had 15,000 to 18,000 people in that big coliseum there. So you're right. Survivor was born off of that. But what we started looking at, what my brother and I started looking at, we started comparing people. We broke it down in little bits and pieces, resources, the people, success rate and all that stuff, and people that surrounded. We knew as long as Ole was in control and Ole had Jimmy Crockett, eating out of his rear pocket, so he was like a puppy dog to Ole. I think he's scared of him. Jim Barnett was scared to death of Ole. He was always afraid Ole's going to beat the hell out of him. He used to tell me that. Ole threatened me, I mean, here's an old man, and you're 300 pounds, you're threatening this little big man here. And so, but we started looking at the people running this thing. Where do you want to throw your hat? You want to throw your hat over here with some of these guys that don't have the business knowledge that this guy up in the northern part of the United States has? Or do you want to go with him where he has all the knowledge and you're assured? Now, people was telling us at the same time, Vince is going to go broke. Then what are you guys going to do? You won't have a job and you won't have your income from your sale, and you can't get booked to the NWA because you just screwed them. Well, we figured that out, that Vince ain't going to go broke. Vince is too smart for that, and Vince could outsmart these guys. And it was just business sense and business acumen to go with who we perceived as the winner, and that turned out to be right because we went with Vince.
Were you at WrestleMania 1?
No, I honestly at that time there, John, I was working as a promoter in Florida. I promoted 36 different closed circuit events for WrestleMania 1 and made about my third largest paycheck from WWE that I ever made promoting those 39 shows in 6 different states. So I promoted the first 4, and then at 5, I was on the road for every one of them.
Well, Mr. Brisco, we got a million offshoots from this, but seeing as how you got the hurt neck from the Viper from Cowboy Bob's grandson.
Yeah, make sure you hear my big announcement coming this Wednesday, man. I'm going to tell you more about my neck.
The big announcement coming from Gerald Brisco this next Wednesday. So this is Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. Mr. Brisco, it's great talking to you.